It's a pleasure to be here today and to serve as one of your senior judges. We always start with introductions, and then I will go ahead after the intro and I will read a quick preamble narrative, and then we'll commence. So can we start with I believe we start with the team and then we go to the judges, and then I'll go ahead and read our intro statement.
All right, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Leonard Delgadillo, and I am the ethics analyst at Apollonian Consulting.
Greetings, my name is Hunter Gomersall, and I am the financial consultant at Apollonian Counseling.
Hi, my name is Kyla Garan, and I'm the legal director at Apollonian Consulting.
Well, hello, and it's nice to meet everybody. Thank you for those intros. So next we will hear, is Rochelle present to introduce?
Hi, everyone. My name is Rochelle Ferris, and I'm an LMU graduate from a long, long time ago. In fact, probably the first or second of the MBA program. So I retired from a career in the software industry about 4 years ago, and now I am a hospital chaplain.
Thank you, Rochelle. Norma, would you like to go next, please?
Hi, team. My name is Norma Miranda Fleffel. I graduated from LMU MBA program back in 2007. My career has been at Herbalife Nutrition, really in charge of product strategy, project management, and product marketing, launching new products around the world. We're in 95 countries now. So focused on vitamins, dietary supplements, outer nutrition, skincare, and sports products. Very happy to be here.
Thank you so much, Norma. Next, we have Tom Fain.
My name is Tom Fain. I'm a retired securities lawyer and presently the curator of a car museum, and I am the oldest of the senior judges.
And if you haven't been to that car museum, I highly recommend it. It's in El Segundo, and it's a game changer in the car museum industry. So my name is Rob Beamer, and I am pleased, along with Tom Fain, to serve as your senior judge today. I also serve as the Director of Executive Programs at Loyola Marymount College of Business Administration. In that capacity, I oversee the EMBA program, as well as our corporate executive education suite of classes. I have a background in finance, so for years prior, I worked as an investment advisor, broker-dealer, and prior to that, was in the seminary, but that's all for another day. I would like to invite our team to get started, but first I will go ahead and read our introductory statement. In this part of the competition, you are taking on a fictional business identity and assigning a fictional business identity to the judges. Please make sure everyone knows who you are and who they are before you begin. Take care of that. You will have 25 minutes to describe the legal, financial, and ethical dimensions of the problem, and to recommend a solution that passes muster on all 3 counts. During this time, teams will be uninterrupted. When you are finished, the judges will ask you questions for 10 to 15 minutes, followed by a general feedback. During the Q&A, both you and the judges stay in character, but after the Q&A, again, the judges will give you feedback outside the role that we're playing. With that, I will turn it over to you.
Good evening, esteemed board of Neuralink. We at Apollonian Consulting are very excited to be with you today. We'd like to thank you for joining us. We're very excited to present not only our diagnosis, but our prescription for the problems facing Neuralink today. Let's get started. First, we'd like to start off by introducing ourselves. My name is Leonard Delgadillo, and I will be the ethics analyst of today's presentation.
My name is Hunter Gomersall, and I will be the financial consultant of today's presentation.
My name is Kyla Garan, and I will be the legal director for our presentation today.
So before we get started on any kind of formal discussion of the problem, we have to identify what exactly Neuralink looks like today. What is the status quo? Neuralink is centered around a device known as the link. The link is described by Neuralink as, quote, a sealed, implanted device that processes, stimulates, and transmits neural signals. What it is essentially the newest variation of technology known as a brain-computer interface, or BCI. And it's much what it sounds like. It's an apparatus that provides a sort of portal between the electrical activity of the brain and some kind of external apparatus like a smartphone or a computer. This technology has profound implications in numerous areas, and one of the foremost is in the lives of disabled people, which brings me to our next point, and that is the stated aim of Neuralink as of today. Neuralink's website states that the goal of the company is, quote, to help people with paralysis to regain independence through the control of computers and mobile devices. Now, that's more or less a pretty accurate representation of what Neuralink is today. It's a neurotechnology company with a goal that might be characterized as objectively good. So you might be asking yourselves, what exactly is the issue here? That's where we come in. The issue starts with unclear visions. It's very important for a company like Neuralink to have a clearly stated purpose. And unfortunately, despite what I showed you on the previous slide, Neuralink does not have that. Claims bordering on the fantastical are made incessantly by some of the top executives at the company, including its current CEO, Elon Musk. These claims quickly catch the attention of the general public, of the media. They bring to mind the kinds of concepts unraveled in films like The Matrix or television shows like Black Mirror, which present bleak dystopian futures overrun by malignant technology. Statements like these, while they might be interesting to talk about with our friends and look at on social media, are ultimately not very productive. And they contradict the stated aims of the company, which is to make a brighter, better future. This problem was one that has plagued Neuralink from the very beginning. Tim Hansen, one of the founding scientists at Neuralink, was quoted as saying that each of Neuralink's co-founders wanted something different. From the get-go, the foundation was uneven. Elon Musk and Tim Hansen, for example, clearly wanted something different for their companies, as did the other 8 members of Neuralink's original board. Furthermore, this is something that has been corroborated by numerous employees. And an employee who has chosen to remain anonymous was quoted as saying that everyone in that entire empire is driven by fear. Neuralink's company culture is characterized by impossible deadlines and impossible expectations on scientists. There is also the problem of unclear leadership. And this ties directly into the problem that we talked about on the last slide. The leaders aren't even sure of what Neuralink is supposed to be, so how can they possibly be good leaders? If you look at any headlines related to Neuralink, they all give you the same thing. The leaders are confused. There's conflict between management and people like Elon Musk. Management is fighting within itself. It's fighting its employees. The company culture is toxic and unproductive, and it doesn't understand the incremental phase of science. So before we go into our proposition, we have to understand 4 key considerations. Number 1 is something I will call the hard problem. The hard problem is the fact that the focus of Neuralink, human consciousness, the brain, these are things we have very little understanding for. We don't exactly know what consciousness is. You ask a philosopher, they will tell you something different from the neuroscientist, and they will tell you something different from the businessman. Everyone has a different definition. It has not been empirically established what exactly consciousness is, how it relates to the brain. Furthermore, Neuralink is a neurotechnology company, and with new technology comes a myriad of new problems. Look at Facebook. Also, Neuralink is arguably the first company of its kind. Though BCIs have been around for many years in various forms, this is the first time that they are being released into the general public as a commercial product like the iPhone. And with this comes profound influence. Neuralink will have influence that is unparalleled in what could be a revolutionary new market. As such, our proposal begins with a clearly defined purpose. Now, this is contrasted with the current purpose of Neuralink. It has to be more than simply a statement on their website. It has to be more than anecdotes occasionally given out by the CEO to NBC News that prompt fun headlines. And with that comes fair and accurate marketing. Neuralink must be honest about what its product is and what its product intends to do. It cannot dilly-dally. It cannot be talking about the product like it's a lightsaber. It has to be honest about its capabilities, and it has to be honest about what exactly it wants to do with that device. Taking these two into consideration, we come to our third aspect of our proposal, and that is a focus on the medical applications of the technology. We will go into further detail later, but the centerpiece of our proposal is a focus on the medical applications and a temporary delay on more commercial applications. All this talk of a Fitbit in your skull has to be put on the shelf for a bit. And tying it all together is perhaps the most important aspect of our proposal, and that is ethical leadership, which I will get into now. We will provide a three-dimensional analysis of the problem. This will consist of an ethical dimension, a financial dimension, and a legal dimension. We will begin with the first, an ethical future for Neuralink. Our ethical approach is two-pronged. It has a focus on consequences complemented by an honest commitment to the corporation's obligations. We'll begin with the consequences. And this is really a rather simple argument, and that is simply that Neuralink has to pay especially close attention to the potential consequences of its actions. And this is for all the reasons we stated earlier. Neuralink will have profound influence in the market of commercial brain-computer interfaces. It will influence how virtually all commercial neurotechnologies unravel from this point forward. You might think of Neuralink as the Facebook of the BCI market. As such, Neuralink must only undertake an action if it is certain that its consequences will objectively improve the state of affairs. If the consequences of an action will result in a state of affairs that is less desirable than the status quo, it must not take that action. However, if it decides that the consequences of a proposed plan of action will result in a state of affairs that is greater, more beneficial than the status quo, it has a moral obligation to undertake those actions. Let's get into the second part of our analysis, and that is a focus on obligations. Again, for the reasons stated earlier, Neuralink has a moral obligation to set an example for the rest of neurotechnology. Everything Neuralink does will be scrutinized. Every decision made, every product that is released to the market, every way that product is released to the market will be watched with hawk eyes. As such, it must make absolutely certain that it is recognizing human beings as ends in themselves with intrinsic value. The proposed technology will essentially become a part of the human beings themselves. You might think of it as something like an artificial heart. It might be an artificial complement to the brain. And it is especially important when you are playing with human lives to make absolutely certain that you are not treating them as mere things or means to an end. They are ends in and of themselves. And lastly, Neuralink must commit to the very general, seemingly abstract concept of a better tomorrow. Now, as I said, this might sound abstract, but we just went over what exactly a better tomorrow is. A better tomorrow is a state of affairs that is better than the status quo. Now, you might be asking yourselves, why exactly is any of this necessary? How exactly will this help Neuralink flourish financially? Well, one of the 10th of the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals is the reduction of inequality. It calls for a collective effort to reduce inequality within and among nations. It defines inequality as inequalities in a number of different categories, including income inequality and inequality between able people and disabled people. How exactly does this tie into Neuralink? Our proposal is an ethically sound goal. Neuralink has the potential to improve the quality of life for millions of people. It could reduce the inequality suffered by disabled individuals all around the world every single day. It could single-handedly put a sizable dent in one of the most pressing issues of our time. A tomorrow with less inequality and suffering is objectively a better tomorrow, a more improved state of affairs, a state of affairs greater than the status quo. There are two paths for Neuralink. One is an ethically sound future that sees it as a bearer of light. It sees Neuralink as something that will put a dent in one of the greatest inequalities of our time. The other is simply the media circus it has become in recent years. That concludes the ethical dimension of our analysis. I will now hand off the presentation to my colleague, Mr. Gomersall.
Thank you, Leonard. I will now conduct a financial analysis of our proposal to determine whether or not it is feasible. Next slide. The first thing to understand that we will look at is the limitations on our ability to precisely determine the feasibility of our proposal. Then we will look at solutions and steps we can take to overcome these obstacles. After that, we will determine the positive impact we believe these solutions will have for both Neuralink and the customers. And finally, we will determine the financial feasibility of our proposal. Next slide, please. When determining the limitations on our understanding of financial feasibility, there are two main things to consider. The first is the underdevelopment state of Neuralink as it stands. As we know, Neuralink has not undergone a single human trial as of now, which means it's not ready to market to the public, which means we won't exactly know how much the device will cost and how much the surgery will cost that goes alongside the device. It's also unclear what the exact makeup of the device will be, with only hints telling us that it will be partly iPhone parts and other more complex parts. The second limitation is the inconsistent goals stated by both Neuralink and company executives. Right now, the website claims to be mostly for medical applications. However, corporate advertising and Elon Musk himself have made hints at more than just medical advertising, hinting at things like genetic enhancement. This means it's unclear exactly what the sales will be upon first release. Next slide, please. Now we will look at the solutions to these obstacles. The first main solution to the underdevelopment problem in the state of Neuralink right now is an active solution, which is to use estimates given by both Neuralink and corporate executives. A more passive solution to this problem would just be to wait until it's released. However, we believe that it might be too late to raise red flags by the time that comes around. The second solution for the inconsistent goals stated by corporate executives and Elon Musk himself ties into our broader solution about limiting Neuralink upon first release to an only medical market. In other words, we believe that the marketing and the advertising should reflect this goal as well. The advertising should reflect that of the entire company, which is to remain purely medical upon first release. Next slide, please. Now we will look at the positive impacts we believe these solutions will have for both Neuralink and the customer. The first comes in the form of insurance bills. Right now, when you get surgery, your insurance provider will charge you based upon how essential or non-essential your surgery is. If your surgery is considered more essential, you'll receive more coverage, but if it's considered less essential by your insurance provider, you'll receive less coverage. We believe that if marketed for medical purposes only, Neuralink will be seen as more of an essential surgery upon first release, which means people who buy the surgery will receive more coverage from their insurance providers, which means they will also have lower bills. In the end, this means higher sales in total, as more people will be more likely to buy the device. The second positive impact comes in the form of public image. If released for more than just medical purposes, this means that the device will reach a wide array of an audience. And if something goes wrong, the image of Neuralink could be tarnished forever, not just in the public sphere, but also in the medical sphere. This could lead to stocks plummeting and hurting the company and investors forever, basically. However, if it's released only with a medical audience, we believe it will be easier to manage if only purely medical. Finally, we will now go into the financial feasibility of our proposal. There are three main things to consider when discussing financial feasibility, which is 1, the current funding, 2, the expected costs, and how this ties into our proposal. The current funding right now includes $360 million in funding as of 2021 from 4 different rounds of funding. There's also $100 million of funding from Musk himself. Now, the expected costs, as we've stated earlier, are unclear exactly what the price will be for the surgery and the device. However, we do know that one of the biggest investments Neuralink has undergone right now is a $20 million investment in robotic surgeons. This is to perform the surgery as it can't be done by human hands. This may seem like a big investment at first, but it's important to consider that the revenue from all the surgeon bots bought in 2017 was approximately $3.1 billion. And Elon Musk has stated himself that the price of the surgery is expected to be somewhere similar to LASIK surgery, which is around $2,000 to $3,000. Finally, how does this tie into our solution? Well, right now we know one in 5 adults, or 52.9 million people in the US, have some sort of mental impairment. If just 500,000 people of that 52.9 million were to purchase the device in the first year, that would lower the cost of all the surgeon bots to $500 per surgery. We believe this is possible because of the nature of the market that Neuralink is advertising to. And we believe that they will only have to advertise to the medical side of it in order to achieve this many people. However, in conclusion, we believe that not only will this be financially beneficial and feasible, but it will be beneficial for both the company and the consumer. Now I hand it over to my colleague, Ms. Garan, to discuss the legality of Neuralink.
Thank you, Hunter. Now we want to take a look at our solution from a legal point of view. Although this device instills hope for many remedies in medicine and has many advantages in that aspect, it should be regarded that the device may bring in some challenging situations, freedom of movement, personal liberty, and personal data being in the first place. This only broadens heavily if the device were to be used past the medical field. Next slide. Neurotechnology can pose interesting and complex legal issues since it can be used to create a so-called interface between the brain and computers. Neuralink is an example of this technology, which is initiated by inserting a microchip into the brain. The brain-computer interfacing technology is arguably a positive step towards merging humans and artificial intelligence. When speaking in medical terms, it seems like a great tool to help bridge the gap of inequality between those who are fully able and those who struggle with diseases and disorders. As its interest becoming more widestream, this technology battles with being overly invasive and could create unanticipated complications within privacy and legal matters. Next slide. As we look at Neuralink, it presents legal issues which should be carefully considered beforehand. What if, for example, a person uses the implanted microchip to commit a crime? Who would be held accountable for the criminal offense? Additionally, what if someone else gains the possession of this electronic equipment and uses it to conduct crime? How would the courts handle the legal issues? In other words, how do we control the human mental capacity? Other concerns may arise as well, like, for example, can employees be taught to use a microchip to improve their mental abilities? Next slide. When looking at the array of ifs, our solution to use this device as a solely medical tool allows many of these possibilities to be non-existent. Neuralink could allow for only doctors to have access to controlling these devices for their patients, but of course with an option for the patient to be able to simply observe on their phone so they still are wrapped in with what's going on inside their brain. With this, it is in proper hands who are also educated on the extent of the device and can properly set it up to help aid people with neurological disorders. Also, these devices would be used on minds that are not as fully functioning to begin with, which lessens their ability to take advantage of the device in an illegal sense. Next slide. Brain implants are not an entirely new technology since they have been used in previous instances. However, merging microchips and artificial intelligence is relatively new and untested with humans currently. This device monitors a specific area of the human brain, uses artificial intelligence to assess neuron activation records, and then it goes ahead to determine what kind of stimulus your brain sector needs per section. Learning, information storage, and data synchronization are now possible as a result of this. Although this technology offers promise for many medical solutions and numerous benefits, it should be noted that it may also present certain challenges, the first of which is the loss of freedom of movement, personal liberty, and personal data. Next slide. Neuralink performs high mental functions such as reasoning, deduction, and learning from prior experiences, which are all considered human-specific talents owing to artificial intelligence technology. As a result, it may interfere with the brain via a chip placed in the human brain. As previously stated, it is critical to address the human brain's exposure to the control and interference using Neuralink technology in the context of criminal law. First and foremost, the security issues that this device may cause should be identified, as well as the actions to prevent them. Once a brain interference is suspected, the authorized person and institutions, as well as the circumstances under which the interference is permitted, must be determined. Even if the situation has already been established prior, the limitations for interfering and the consequences for failure to comply with these rules should definitely be established as well. It is also critical to gain prior consent from the individual, as well as to define the scope of the interference, even if consent has been received. Another point to consider is whether Neuralink's interference with the human brain and its functioning would erase a person's free will, or whether it would perhaps encourage the person to engage in wrong behavior as a result of their free will. The portrayal of a person's free will likely gets a bit hazy at this point, making judging the negligence in a person's behavior a bit problematic. In the context of fault liability, it is possible that Neuralink and other seller companies from which the consumers acquired it might be held accountable. The legislation on the protection of personal data is another area of law that may be impacted by technologies like Neuralink. This is because the amount of data acquired by such a device implanted in the brain grows over time, and this information is very private and confidential since it requires security for our thoughts. In conclusion, artificial intelligence implementations require a legal framework that considers the balance of rights and freedom, as well as the benefits of the technology.
That will conclude our presentation. We would once again like to thank the judges for coming and listening to our proposal. We will now open up to any questions you may have.
Thank you, Team Apollonian. We will start with our two newer judges. So Norma and Rochelle, if you'd like to start us off, that'd be great.
Yeah, I have two questions that I'm not sure. We're in the fourth round of funding, is that correct?
Yes, there have been 4 different rounds of funding.
Okay, but they still haven't had a human interaction, correct?
Correct. They have not tested on humans yet.
Okay. And are we presenting to us or are we looking for another round of funding?
We are not looking for another round of funding. That's not part of our proposal.
Okay. So the purpose of the proposal is to update the board of directors on the status?
No, it's to limit the device use to purely medical purposes upon first release.
To narrow the scope. Okay. All right. Thank you.
I just have a couple of question or two, a little bit tied to what Rochelle was asking about the funding. Do we know if when the funding was secured, if it was tied to the possibilities of the device? Like, was it more towards funding for medical use or for as broad as it could get? Do we know the different rounds of funding, what the funding was collected for?
So the funding through all 4 rounds of funding was just a broad general funding. I don't think it was specified for medical or for any other purpose. I don't even think most of the corporate executives have made that entirely clear. So it was just a broad round of funding.
Okay. And then was this only focused to start or maybe launch in the US, or is this something that would go global and therefore we would limit to we're suggesting to limit to medical use only in the US or wherever this may go?
We would hope that even if it was released internationally, that it would also still only be released for medical purposes upon first release.
At the moment, Neuralink is only operating in the United States. It doesn't have any kind of satellite offices or operations anywhere else in the world. But of course, if Neuralink were to go global, I'll corroborate what my teammate said. We hope that its applications will be primarily medical at the beginning. Of course, this is a goldmine of a technology, and it can be expanded upon eventually. But in the coming years, with as limited as our understanding is, with the very weak legal framework surrounding neurotechnology, we propose that whether it's in the United States or anywhere else in the world, the applications be purely medical.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And then just a question, and maybe we didn't think through this one yet, but if we are proposing to just limit or narrow the scope to pursue more of a medical use, would a possible solution be to launch two separate brands, to have a medical use part of our business, and then separately have maybe something that's not targeted towards medical under a different brand or a different umbrella? Do you guys think that would still accommodate this issue we're in, or would that not solve it from an ethical situation?
Given the status quo, I would say that that situation wouldn't exactly be ideal, at least not compared to our proposal. As we stated numerous times in the presentation, this technology is super new. It hasn't been tested on humans. It's barely being tested on monkeys. And with something this new, trying to release it into the general public is like opening a Pandora's box. If you thought Facebook was a bit problematic when it began, just imagine what this could do. There's a myriad of things that could go wrong. When you have something focused on a medical application, say like when you're trying to release a new drug, it has to undergo a significant amount of testing. At the beginning of the coronavirus pandemic, there was a lot of question whether we would be able to develop a vaccine simply because of how long it takes for medical devices to be approved by the FDA and other advisory agencies. There's a lot of oversight that the technology would have to go through before ever entering someone's brain, before ever going to your local Walgreens or Apple store. As a result, we would say no, that situation, that proposal would not be ideal, simply given how new the technology is, how weak the legal framework is. That's not exactly a very intelligent solution at the moment, but in the future, absolutely. Once the technology is developed further, once it's been proven, once it's been officially approved, proven to work.
Got it. Thank you. My last question is, when we talk a little bit about ethical leadership and consequences and a focus on obligation, it sounds like you're also asking for our support in creating and really maintaining a culture of ethics, right? A commitment to ethics by the company. Do you guys suggest a change in management as part of this strategy as well?
We wouldn't exactly suggest a change in management. We wouldn't say you should fire Elon Musk or get rid of the board and start altogether anew. Absolutely not. We believe that people are entirely capable of change, and good leaders aren't born as good leaders, they're made. And if the current leadership at Neuralink truly wants to commit itself to a better tomorrow, it can do so. You don't need to swap Elon Musk for a new Steve Jobs. Elon Musk himself has the capacity. He's shown it before with other business ventures, as has the rest of the board. All of you have the potential to be good leaders. We know this by the fact that you're sitting in this room. It's whether you want to commit yourselves to being good leaders, whether you truly want to focus on the consequences, whether you truly want to live up to the obligations outlined in our proposal.
Great. Thanks, team. That's it from my side, Rob.
Thanks, Norma. Tom, would you like to go with some questions?
I think I would. What I'm about to say leads into the feedback section too, because although they sound like questions, they're in part feedback. As a member of this board, I thought I understood this company and where it was so far. I want to congratulate you all because you've managed to confuse me. And frankly, confusing me is not easy. As I understand, you don't have a product. You have a concept. Am I right about that? We don't have a product, we have a concept.
The product is in like a beta stage. It's not like fully ready to be marketed, but you're correct in that, like, no, we do not have the final product.
Okay, well, beta stage means nothing to me. What do we have?
We have the chip and like surgery has been done on like animals, on apes.
The implanting of the chip.
Yes.
Okay, with respect to the chip that has been implanted, what's the design capability of that chip?
What do you mean by that exactly?
What's it supposed to do?
It's supposed to connect the brainwaves of the person using the chip to something like a device, like a smartphone or some other form of technology.
To what end?
For instance, say a person with paralysis would like to operate a smartphone the way that you and I can. They want to play their favorite song. They might not be able to do that given the technology of today. It's going to take a lot of work. With something like Neuralink, the simple act of asking it, not verbally, not with your voice, but with the electrical work of your brain to put on your favorite song, that's what it can do. It can allow people to access the modern world. Disabled people have objectively been left out of the modern world.
So
We may have wheelchairs.
would it be fair to say that's the goal of the design of the device?
It really depends on who you ask. If you ask some of the scientists working at the lower levels, they might say, yes, that's what it was designed for. If you ask Elon Musk, he's going to tell you its purpose was to stop the AI apocalypse.
Well, as I understand the mission, someone reported to you guys that we, as members of management, were hopelessly confused and disorganized about our mission, and you should come in and study us and make recommendations. Do I have that part right?
Yes, I would say that's correct.
Have you been able to teach a monkey to use a smartphone?
We've been able to teach a monkey how to play ping pong on a smartphone.
It seems to me that your study of this issue and your presentation of it as an ethical problem is premature. I don't see how you can determine the ethics of a product until you know what it's going to do and what it's able to do. Do you have a comment in response to that?
It would be irresponsible for us as a company. It would be morally dubious of us to not consider the potential ethical ramifications of a product that is being inserted into the human body. If we are going to abide by the objective truth that humans have inherent value, that human life is something worth preserving, protecting, then it would be ethically irresponsible for us to simply go ahead and continue developing this product with no kind of ethical oversight or any kind of attempt to forecast what ramifications this technology could have.
I don't get the if part of that. Isn't there universal agreement on the value of human life?
I would agree with you. Yes, there is a universal agreement on the value of human life. That is exactly why it is our obligation to consider the ethical ramifications of a technology that could potentially have negative consequences on the very existence of human life.
Okay, but there you go back to could potentially, and you touch right upon my observation that this thing really doesn't exist yet. You got concepts, but you don't have anything tangible.
We believe
okay, I'm done, Rob.
Okay.
Sorry, can I add really quick to that, Tom and Rob? Would the ethical issue, would you say, is the challenges you're having with leadership and the direction of the company more than with the link itself?
Correct. It would be the direction that the company is heading in, that we believe that it could head in.
We believe that to ensure an ethical future of the company itself, you need to have ethical leadership. And in regards to Mr. Fenn's question about whether our ethical judgments are premature, I abide by my original answer, which is that it would be irresponsible of us to not at least attempt to forecast the ethical ramifications of the technology once it's fully developed.
All right, thank you, Leonard and team. Hunter, I do have another question for you. I'm going to be quick because we are short on time, obviously, here. This one kind of takes us out of the theoretical, legal, ethical, and back towards the financial. So hopefully it's going to be more cut and dry. I just want to ask, look, there are a lot of assumptions being made. I think all of us on the board are shrugging our shoulders, and you have to be attentive to the would-be's and the hypotheticals, and that's the world we live in. That's AI, that's data scraping, that's machine learning, and that's everything that this company seems to be working within. But the finance world needs to be very certain, and funding needs to be very certain. And I wonder if in your presentation today, you prepared any kind of sensitivity or any kind of talking point around whether or not it would be advantageous for us financially to scale back from this route that, you said it yourself. Elon Musk has championed SpaceX. He has championed Tesla, obviously, the Boring Company. The list goes on and on. So why would we defer away from someone who obviously is worth his salt financially and scale back from that? So I guess to boil my question down to the bone, do you have anything to show us that shows this recommended course that you're explaining would be financially advantageous for us to pursue?
Yeah, so I discussed two main benefits to marketing only for medical purposes upon first release, which is that it has the potential to lower bills for people who are purchasing the product, because insurance companies may view it as a more essential surgery, which means they would provide more coverage for it, which means more people would be likely to buy it, which means that the total revenue would be higher for the company. And then there's also the problem of, assuming that they did market for more than just medical purposes, if they marketed to a wide array of people and something did go wrong, which doesn't seem totally unlikely given the current state of the Neuralink technology and how much little is actually known about it, there could be something wrong, and then that problem would be much harder to manage, and the image of Neuralink could be forever tarnished and it wouldn't be able to recover. However, if it's only released for medical purposes, the impact of that would be lessened amongst the consumers, and it would probably be easier to conduct something like a recall of all the devices without severely impacting the company in the long term.
I'd also like to add to that. You mentioned Elon Musk's SpaceX, and its goal when Elon Musk started it all was to get to Mars. You still log onto Twitter and you'll see the hashtags get to Mars, but SpaceX has not gotten to Mars yet. While it is a successful company, arguably one of the more successful of his business ventures, the fact is that it's taken an incrementalist approach to space travel. It started with just getting a rocket off the ground, getting a rocket to the ISS, or even before that, getting the rocket out of the atmosphere. We recommend a similar approach to Neuralink. We're not trying to undermine Elon Musk's credibility as a businessman. Quite on the contrary, we believe that his approach to previous issues, like electric automobiles, commercial space travel, is the approach that could be taken here. Because Neuralink hasn't had a lot of success given the status quo. Elon Musk has been behind it for the past few years, the entirety of its existence. And we haven't seen too much development yet.
All right, I'm gonna have us transition to the feedback because we're a little bit over time here. We'll take about 5 minutes for feedback. And Rochelle, would you like to start? And then we'll have Norma, Tom, and then I'll close.
Let's see, for the financial and business dimension, I liked that you added the feasibility limits up front, which you told us, that you really can't, you can't post any fictitious numbers or guesses. That was a good thing. As far as feedback for the whole team goes, I would say maybe in the very first paragraph, you could state the purpose clearly of what you intend, of what this presentation is, and then and clarify where the product development phase is, because we all kind of had a confusion about that. And I could be old and confused too, I admit it. And then finally, because this is a human, AI interaction, I would like to see at least a little bit devoted to, like, what if the company goes out of business? What if there's a catastrophic failure for the company and there are people running around with this device in their head? How would we maintain that?
Thank you, Rochelle. Appreciate that feedback. Go ahead, Norma.
Great point, Rochelle. I didn't even think of that. I thought you did a great job. I thought at the beginning of the presentation, we were going to talk more about unethical leadership and maybe this culture of bringing ethics into the management, office, and really looking at creating a better culture for greater employee engagement and performance. And you mentioned a little bit on unrealistic deadlines and kind of management pushing the team to work on unrealistic or unattainable goals, more from like the science side. And so I thought that's where we were going. So I think I missed a step or didn't really follow through with the rest of it, as far as changing that direction to now limiting to be medical and not seeing as part of the proposal a little bit more about management, right? Which is why I asked that question around, Are you suggesting the board of directors step in and maybe change management? Not necessarily firing Elon Musk and his $100 million, right? But really looking at bringing in another level or another type of executive, maybe a chief science officer, somebody to really dedicate more to the science of it. I thought that's where we were going a little bit. I also was wondering, as you were presenting, a lot of your topics around like personal information, personal data collection, misinformation, potentially around claims and moral use of data and promises made to people, even as a medical device, even if you limit it to only be for medical use, do we still have that same problem of some of the claims being a bit outrageous and a little bit of misinformation out there? So just a couple of thoughts around that.
Thank you, Norma. Tom, go ahead.
This is feedback now. I think I probably already appropriated to myself more time than I deserve. But let me say a couple of positive things. All of you are articulate. It's a good presentation that you made. However, you have some serious logic problems. And as you think more about this subject, you should address them.
Thank you, Tom. Yeah, Leonard, Hunter, Carrie, very impressed. Kayla, very impressed with your communication and your delivery. It's clear you rehearsed and you articulated well. Oftentimes I thought you were reading a manuscript, but you were making eye contact into the camera. So if you did, you hit it from me. But it was clearly polished. And at times I'd say it was too polished. And that means that there's an opportunity when you're presenting, giving a presentation in a business setting, such as to a board of directors, where you can be a little more relatable, cut down with the jargon, bring it down to us. You'll find sometimes board of directors aren't the experts. You're the experts, you're the consultants. And so a lot of times I think the judging Q&A reminded you of that, of, hey, let's take this back down to our level and sort of speak in a way that we can really get a grasp of where we are with the technology, what it is that we're doing. And my question was really just show me a graph. Show me any kind of sensitivity you can to show that this is going to be profitable if we limit in scale to the medical community, which clearly would be profitable, right? And I think you're arguing for a very intuitive thing, and that's let's limit risk. You watch a horror movie, you don't go, what? My goodness, we want that to happen in real life. Nobody wants that. So play to your strengths, play to the fact that everything is going in your direction. All you have to do is simplify your message to the audience and just show a few graphs of profitability. And as Rochelle said, just break down the big picture. And as Tom said, let's really describe that product. And your executive summary can also very well written, but it reads like a legal document. Talk to us again like we're second graders. We're on the board of directors. We have a job to assess the company's aims, make ethical decisions, but also to return shareholder value. So all these things in play, long-winded way of saying good job, but just simplify the message. All right, I've said way too much. Thank you.